release of these products. The cell and gene therapy is so much faster that when you're working together, understanding where the endpoint is, where are we trying to get to, and for everybody to be on that same race in parallel, working in step with each other, so that as each success of a clinical study goes and success with the regulators, what does that mean? How are we going to staff that up? How are we going to enable that whole supply chain that you have to work on a global basis? And that's really where the partnership between a CRO and a drug developer in that CGT space becomes just a fundamentally different way of working together. It's a really true partnership.
Welcome back to part 2 with Daniel Galbraith from Solvias. In the first half, we explored his biotech journey and the seismic shifts in analytical development. Now we're getting tactical. Daniel will share the top analytical challenges that consistently derail bioprocessing teams and how to implement these phase-appropriate strategies that actually speed up development, and the critical factors for selecting the right CRO partner. Plus his predictions on which therapeutic modalities will dominate the next 5 years. Let's jump in. Are you juggling the complexities of CMC development while trying to enjoy the beauty of biotech? Have you ever wondered if there's a way to simplify bioprocessing? Welcome to the Smart Biotech Scientist podcast, where we're diving headfirst into the very challenges you face. We're breaking it down, demystifying the jargon, and giving you the keys to unlock your full potential. I'm your host, David Brohlman, and I get it. With 15 plus years in the biotech industry, I face the same challenges you do. There's a way to simplify and streamline so you can remove complexity, you can skip trials and errors, deliver without delay your groundbreaking therapy to clinics at market, and still enjoy every single step. Do you want to learn how industry experts and I did it? Grab a cup of coffee and your favorite notebook and pen. Now is the time to take your bioprocessing game to the next level. Let's smarten up biotech. Given the multiple technical and scientific challenges, how do you at Solvias or other CROs, how do you enable a successful commercialization of novel therapies? What is that thing that makes a project successful?
I think for us in the cell and gene therapy space, the thing that's made it successful is the commitment and the partnership that you have to understand right from the start is needed to actually make these products successful. So if you think cell and gene therapy, normally you start off with a very small number of patients, batches to treat. So phase 1 clinical studies, all of that. So you're investing a lot of time and effort to actually test and release quite a small number of batches of product for that early stage clinical trial. But with cell and gene therapy, especially in some of these conditions where they're an abbreviated approval process, and you can read up about how the FDA does that, but there's a number of ways that we can take these treatments that treat rare conditions, where you can go from very early on a phase 1 study to phase 3 and now approval. And that can be done in a relatively short period of time. And what you can find is that you're going from actually testing a small number of products to testing quite a large number of products. You're going through an approval process and validation of the systems and all of the analytics around that. And then you're in a commercial situation where you're trying to release in maybe hundreds or perhaps thousands of these products each year. That scale up is a challenge for everybody because you're going from testing, 1 batch a month to maybe 100 batches a month. And that from a CRO position, there's equipment, lab space, people, training, SOPs. Sometimes you want your testing to be done on another continent. So maybe you're testing in Europe and you need to do releasing in the US. So have you got a facility in the US? Have you got them set up to be able to do that testing as well? The converse is true from the US to Europe, or then people want to set up in Japan, Korea, whatever. That scaling of going from a small number to a global enterprise, as it were, to actually make these drugs available to a global population is much faster than any monoclonal or ADC or anything like that would be, where you would maybe have 5 or 10 years to go from a phase 1 to a commercial sort of like release of these products. The cell and gene therapy is so much faster that when you're working together, understanding where the endpoint is, where are we trying to get to, and for everybody to be on that same race in parallel, working in step with each other, so as that as each success of a clinical study goes and success with the regulators, what does that mean? How are we going to staff that up? How are we going to enable that whole supply chain that you have to work on a global basis? And that's really where the partnership between a CRO and a drug developer in that CGT space becomes just a fundamentally different way of working together. It's a really true partnership. And I know people use that term partnership quite frequently, but I think when you really understand what you're trying to do with cell and gene therapy products, that partnership just becomes more and more important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it should be a partnership because it's, as a drug developer, I might have just one shot at my goal, and it has to work out. So the partnership has to be perfect. It's not just a transaction. I think it's much more. And this leads me to another point, because since a lot can go wrong, what can we do to avoid pitfalls, and what are pitfalls you're seeing when working with a CRO?
In some ways, there is a choice that companies have. They can have the choice to sort of like bring in the testing and actually do it themselves. And some companies do decide that they want to actually control all of these things, and they want to establish their own labs and they're doing their own things. And that's a perfectly valid way to approach the analytics. It's an expensive way to do it, and it's a time-consuming way to do it, but it's a way to do it. The pitfalls of working with a CRO, sometimes you're relying on them scheduling the work and making sure that the work is done in a timely way so that you get the results when you need the results. That can be quite a challenge if you've not made the CRO very aware of your timelines, and if your timelines are changing, what's going on. It becomes particularly acute when there's an issue. So sometimes there's a problem with the manufacturing, we're getting unexpected results. Can the CRO provide resources to actually do that investigation as fast as you would like it done? And that's where having that good relationship, making sure they're aware of what's going on, what are the implications of these results, and you need that really good working relationship. But it's a separate company that they have multiple customers, and they need to balance that. So a CRO can't always be as reactive as maybe you would like them to be, because they have these other commitments that they've made. So I think understanding what capacity the CRO is working, you obviously want them all. You want the CRO to be making money and all of that kind of good stuff, but you want to know they have a little bit of softness in their capacity that if something does go wrong, can we jump in and get those resources? Because time costs money in the drug manufacturing world. And if you're delaying things, delaying clinical trials and all of that, that's a challenge financially and obviously for the patients. So you want to make sure your CRO is working, as I say, lock and step with you so that when these issues come up. But I think most people would find one of the pitfalls is that scheduling and resource issue working with a CRO.
So what I'm hearing, Daniel, it's number one, it's the communication is important, that you let your CRO know that this is highly critical. And then it's also the timely manner that you need to be able to have these results when you need them, especially to troubleshoot, right?
Yeah, I mean, you want to be sure that they can troubleshoot. So you challenge them when, do they understand the product? Do they understand the process? Do they understand the technical capabilities of the assays that you're doing? So you want to make sure they've got the competence, essentially. Absolutely. But I see it, the relationships become challenging when pressure is applied, and pressure is usually applied when there's a crunch time when it comes up to submissions and acquiring that data at the right time. That's where these relationships become challenging, and it's where the good CROs can pull through.
Before we continue, biotech founders, I want to talk directly to you. Do you know that feeling when an investor asks about your manufacturing strategy and you freeze? One wrong CMC decision can cost you $2 million and 18 plus months of delays. Yet many CEOs are flying blind on these critical decisions. That's why I created the 1-week CMC strategy assessment. In 1 week, you get a personalized assessment of your molecule and development stage. We identify critical gaps before they become million-dollar mistakes, plus a strategic roadmap for high-stakes investor meetings. One CEO told me, "David took me from feeling powerless about our CMC roadmap to confidently pitching investors. An absolute game changer for time-pressed CEOs." Whether you are preparing for Series A, approaching IND filing, or facing scale-up challenges, this gives you confidence to ace investor and board conversations instead of surviving them. Ready to stop second-guessing your CMC strategy? Check the link in the show notes and secure your spot. Because your breakthrough therapy deserves a solid CMC strategy. Now, let's get back to our episode. A big challenge in developing a drug is to decide what expertise or know-how you're building inside of your company and what is the part you're outsourcing to your CRO to be faster. So there's a trade-off, obviously. You outsource to your CRO, usually it's faster, but you will not have perhaps the knowledge inside your company. So what is a good way to find the sweet spot there?
There is a dynamic. You always have the drug developer, and then normally, well, if you look at cell and gene therapy, you would have a CDMO, so someone that does the manufacturing, and then some of the manufacturing will be done, and some of the testing and release of the product will actually be done by the CDMO. They will have a level of expertise. They're right there. They have the samples available. They can do it solid very quickly. And then there's some part of that subset of the characterization the CDMO usually doesn't have the expertise to handle, so they would then outsource that to the CRO. And then there's that dynamic between the drug developer, the CDMO, and the CRO. Now, managing that relationship, so these three parties in play, from a drug developer point of view, you really need to, or I would advise you to invest in that project management capability within your company, because there's going to be a lot of things happening. A lot of decisions need to be made, and they need to be made very quickly. And you need to be able to focus on these and actually control them and manage them to your expectations. So the CDMO will do the manufacturing. They'll then ship samples to the CRO. They'll then get results. And then someone has to collate all of these results, usually your project management team and the people that are reviewing them, your quality team, regulatory, all of those people, and bringing them together. So there's so many moving parts in that relationship. Now, everybody is experienced. They've done this before. They know how it's done. It's this manufacturing process, this product, this clinical trial, what you're trying to do. You're in control. You should be making the calls, making the decisions. Where are things being done? What are the results? How are we analyzing the results and all of that? And that's where investing in that, I think, would be the number one suggestion I would make in that logistics, project management of the system. Let the CDMO and the CRO do what they know best. They know how to do a lot of these things. Don't replicate what they do, because I think that's a folly there. But definitely manage, and that management sort of process, I think, is something to invest in. If there was something else that you wanted to invest in more, I think there is some of the characterization of your drug is probably something that should be outsourced, because that's a once and done thing. So investing in that is probably, I don't see a return on investment from that. I think if you have a drug that has a particular, and it's a very difficult way of measuring its activity, that maybe you can't find a CRO that can actually help with that, that might be one other thing that you may want to spend a bit of time investing in. Either you work very closely with the CRO to actually put that in place, or you may want to do it yourself. The issue tends to be bringing things internally for just one or two analytical techniques. It tends to be quite an expensive thing to do, as you mentioned. So you would have to do a kind of return on investment. Is it worth investing in a CRO, getting them up to speed and actually letting them do it? Or is it something I really need to control myself? Most people usually go down the CRO route because it's an added task that perhaps that sometimes stretches the company a bit too far. So is probably the CRO is preferable, but sometimes we do see people, some companies do decide that really for very complicated drugs. For most people, for most modalities, the CRO route is probably the best way to go.
Before we wrap up, Daniel, what burning question haven't I asked that you're eager to share with our biotech community?
I think the most common question I get is to try and predict the future. What's going to be the next big thing? And all of those questions. And I find that sort of like quite entertaining. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell the future. I think the only comment I would probably make to that respect is that from what I've seen, not one single modality is going to win out. We've got so many different mechanisms of actually treating disease nowadays. And I think the most interesting thing is how these things can be used together to treat conditions. And where I think the challenge from an analytical point of view is how do we actually look at how these drugs work together to then treat a condition? And is there a way that we can actually look at an antibody drug conjugate and a piece of mRNA together in an analytical situation to actually look at how these things can be used in combination? That's going to be the future, and I'm not too sure as an industry the CROs are ready for that, to look at these combinations of therapies working in concert and how they can improve the outcome of patients. But it's definitely the way that the industry's going, is that drugs are not going to be used in isolation. They're going to be much more often used in combination. And I'm not too sure we've actually really understood from an analytical point of view how these combinations work. So that would be the challenge for the future, I think. But it's actually not that far away that people are starting to ask these questions.
Yeah, let's see what the future holds. It's definitely going to be exciting. With all that we've covered today, Daniel, what is the most important takeaway from our conversation?
I think from an analytical point of view, I would say that understanding really how to work with a CRO is probably what I'd like to get across. We want to be, most all the CRO industry, we definitely want to be a partner. We want to share with your success. The more open and transparent everybody is with how to work together and how to learn how to work together, and actually have an optimistic mindset when establishing those relationships, I think is probably the best takeaway I would suggest to have with CRO. They want to share with your success.
Fantastic, Daniel. Thank you so much for sharing all the insights. I have greatly enjoyed our conversation. Where can people connect with you?
I'll share my email address, just danielgalbraith@solvias.com. But we attend many conferences throughout the year. I'd be happy to discuss anybody's analytical questions, concerns, interests anytime.
Excellent, smart biotech scientists. You will find the links down in the description. And Daniel, thank you once again for being on the show today and sharing all these amazing insights. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thanks again, David.
What an insightful conversation with Daniel Galbraith. From avoiding over-engineering early methods to selecting the right CRO partner, his 3 decades of experience shine through every recommendation. These are battle-tested strategies that can save your program months and millions. And don't forget to grab the Notion CMC dashboard from the show notes. It also includes the proven map roadmap that consistently hits IND timelines. And you will see you can use that to visualize your timelines, your tasks, your risks in a very convenient way. You will get the exact step-by-step process that eliminates months of trial and error, saving your time and costly mistakes. And if Daniel's insights resonated with you, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or on your favorite podcast platform. And I thank you so much for tuning in today, and I will see you next time. Keep making biotech smart. All right, smart scientists. That's all for today on the Smart Biotech Scientist podcast. Thank you for tuning in and joining us on your journey to bioprocess mastery. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. By doing so, we can empower more scientists like you. For additional bioprocessing tips, visit us at smartbiotechscientist.com. Stay tuned for more inspiring biotech insights in our next episode. Until then, let's continue to smarten up biotech.